Alright, it's finally time for that video. It is the best albums of 2016 in my opinion. I'm going to try and keep this short and sweet like a lot of the things that's supposed to be on this channel, even though we tend to ramble a little bit longer than we should. I would like to acknowledge the fact that I know I am a douchebag being dressed like this, but it's hot as fuck, finally! So let's just get right into it. Starting off with some honorable mentions, I wanted to mention Andy Stott's Too Many Voices, Death Grips with Bottomless Pit, David Bowie with Black Star, and Night Verses with Into the Vanishing Light. All of these albums were great picks. I think you should check all of them out. I just didn't think they were necessarily the greatest of the year, or I didn't have enough context given the Bowie record to really feel like I appreciated the album as much as some other people did. At number 20 is a little bit of a cheat, but both of these bands are fronted by Jeremy Bolm. It is Touche Amore with Stage 4 and Hesitation Wounds with Awake for Everything. These albums are two totally different sides of Jeremy, one being a very personal album and one being very political. They are both heavily powerful, though. They're just really kind of soul-crushing and just, in general, very intense experiences. Recommend them both highly. Number 19, we have Frank Ocean's Blonde. I've never been the biggest Frank Ocean fan, but man, some of these songs are undeniable. I didn't really like it even at first when I listened to it, but the more I kept hearing some of these songs, the more they got stuck in my head, and I couldn't really, ignore it. It was such a big event this year in music. Number 18 is Injury Reserve Floss. Now this is a fucking banger of an album. Injury Reserve is an amazing act if you're into hip-hop that maybe isn't as commercial or as, trappy as a lot of the stuff you're going to be hearing nowadays. The production is really great, and they just bring crazy energy. Number 17 is an album that I thought showed a lot of maturity and growth. It is Childish Gambino with Awaken My Love. I'm not a huge soul or funk person, but I thought that this album was phenomenal, and I thought it deserved a lot higher scores than I was seeing it get. I think that it was a big step for Donald Glover, and I think it's just really showing how he's maturing as an artist and kind of moving beyond this sort of immature hip-hop that he was putting out before this. At number 16, we have another hip-hop record, although it is way unconventional. It is Clipping with Splendor and Misery. This album is avant-garde, it's ambient, it's obtuse as fuck, but it is so rewarding once you really dive into the story, and I highly recommend it for anybody who's looking for something that's a little bit more thought-provoking, a little bit more on the experimental side, but still has a lot of that hip-hop edge. A lot of hip-hop this year. At number 15, it is Schoolboy Q with Blank Face LP. This is a massive album. After Oxymoron being rather commercial, Blank Face is just kind of a wild smattering of different experiments and different styles that Schoolboy is riding on top. And I think he brings a lot to all of them. I don't think that all of them go over necessarily perfectly, but I do think it is a crazy ambitious project, and I give him all the props in the world for it. Number 14, it is Nails! 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 At number 13, we have one of the angstiest albums of the year with The Dream Is Over by Pup. This is blistering pop punk and hardcore punk. It just really kind of blends these two worlds together, and it's catchy as fuck at the same time, but also, you know what, it's the type of shit that you're going to be yelling when you're frustrated, and you're going to feel youthful and just, I can fight the world, I don't care. Like, it's kind of woe is me, but also is just so catchy and undeniable that, you gotta love it. Number 12 is Kendrick Lamar, Untitled Unmastered. I know this isn't a full album, although it's got more concept than a lot of albums that I really see coming out. It's just fucking gold. Kendrick Lamar is shitting greatness at this point. I think a lot of these more experimental, kind of jazz-oriented tracks, honestly, are a little bit better than some of the stuff I heard on To Pimp a Butterfly. I really think that he took some space and just went for all of the things he wanted to here, and I really appreciate that. At number 11, it is Let Live If I'm the Devil. This one was a really big favorite for me when it first came out, and it kind of waned, but I still think that there is an undeniable catchiness for it, and a sort of maturity to how Let Live approaches pop punk this time around, instead of these hardcore punk that they've been doing. In the top 10 now, Tim Hecker, Love Streams. Now this is a much brighter release from Tim Hecker. It's kind of the antithesis, to Virgins, his last record, which was very cold, stark, and felt like it was confined in this space, whereas I feel like Love Streams is this blossoming, just bright, vibrant flower, and he's experimenting with the human voice, which I'm crazy excited to see what he does with that in the future. Want to see him work that into some of his starker compositions, but I definitely don't think this is a bad release for being as airy or light as it is. At number 9, it is Oathbreaker with Rhea. This is a great black metal, shoegaze, hardcore punk record that kind of fuses a whole lot of these elements that bands like Death have been playing with. But they are fronted by Caro? I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that right, but she is insane. Her vocals are haunting or piercing, and they just bring so much extra to this record. At number 8, it is one of the most fun, yet somewhat depressing records that I've heard this year. It is Jeff Rosenstock with Worry. This is pop punk at its finest. It is catchy, it is fun, it is angsty as fuck, it's confused, it has no shame, and it is glorious for that. Over 17 tracks, Jeff Rosenstock tackles a number of topics, and they all just go over with flying colors. At number 7, it's an album that I know was kind of polarizing this year with its wild, maybe not wild, it's different experimentation compared to what he's been doing in the past. It is Bon Iver's 22 a Million. This album, although I can acknowledge that it has a lot of flaws and it's not necessarily as groomed as I would expect a project from Justin Vernon to be, it definitely had some crazy highlights. 33 God, 666, and Over Soon are just some of my favorite tracks of this year, and I can't see myself putting this album any lower. At number 6, we have probably my favorite actual hip-hop album of the year. It is Danny Brown, Atrocity Exhibition. This is a wild, depressing, sometimes twisted, kind of funny record that is just a great showcase for Danny Brown's crazy personality, and the production he raps over is immaculate. It is wild, all over the place, and totally unconventional for a lot of the things we're seeing in contemporary hip-hop. I can't wait to see what he does next. At number 5, I have to thank Joseph for showing me this album. It is Car Seat Headrest with Teens of Denial. This is Will Toledo's major label debut on Matador, and it is insane. It's huge, it lasts a long-ass time, but all of it is exciting, all of it is entertaining and catchy. I think there's a lot to be said about how Will Toledo writes these stories and really just kind of has them wind and build on each other to create a full picture of some of these more self-destructive tendencies that we see in the youth today. At number 4, we have probably my favorite metal album of the year. It is the Dillinger Escape Plan with Disassociation. This is their farewell album, and although I am sad to see them go, I'm really glad we got this last piece of music. It is blistering, emotional, straight up wild. It has a lot of areas where they are experimenting with different sounds and different ideas, especially like they have a track that's straight up IDM on this album. And I feel like they've touched on some of these ideas before, but they've never really explored it in the same breadth that they are on this album, because this is their farewell album. It's their time to let go and just do everything, and it's a crazy great album for that. At number 3, we have probably my most played album this year. It is Anderson .Paak's Malibu. This album is catchy. It's great at storytelling. It's got lush and amazing production. It's got all of the things going for it. And the more you listen to it, the more you kind of fall in love with a lot of these songs and the stories that Anderson .Paak is telling on these songs. I just think it's a great overall experience, and although it's a rather large album, I feel like almost every song has its merit and goes over really well. I really enjoyed a lot of the tracks, especially Come Down and Heart Don't Stand a Chance. Number 2 actually sat at the top of this list for a lot of this year. It is Swans with The Glowing Man. Now this is kind of a meditative album, almost a religious experience. It's the last of their trilogy of kind of ultra albums with these 2-hour-long, crazy, huge projects. And this one is a lot more repetitive. It's got less tracks than the other two. It's got these 20-minute, 15-minute, I think there's a half-an-hour track on this album that are just building on this repetition. And sometimes they're more calm, and they don't take the more primal or animalistic vibe that To Be Kind took, but instead they just keep building and meditating and just, I don't even know. They build an atmosphere that you cannot find on any other album, and although I am sad to see Michael Gira kind of end this period of Swans, I don't know how it's going to translate in the future. I'm just glad that we got this last sort of piece of the puzzle with this Seer, To Be Kind, and The Glowing Man. I think all 3 of them are immaculate albums, and I think this was just the perfect closer. And at number 1, it's an album that I love. And you know it, and it's true. It's Nickel Star Sirens. That didn't rhyme at the end there. But I know in my review I said that I felt like this album was a little bit lacking because it wasn't quite fully fleshed out. At only around 42 minutes, it just felt like there was more to it than just these 6 songs. And when I got the vinyl and I heard Wildflowers, I knew this was it. This is insane, ambitious, techno, I don't know what you want to call it. It's just got so many sounds, so many textures on it, and the grooves, especially on No and History Lesson and the 3 Sides of Nazareth, are just insane. It's such a crazy album that has so much to offer, and I feel like the vinyl just really pushed it to that next level because it's no longer this tight 42 minutes, it's almost 50 minutes now, which doesn't seem like that much, but once you kind of give it that extra girth, that little bit of extra space to breathe, you start to see these ideas connecting more, you start to see them kind of all meld together into this one cohesive piece of art. It's honest to God one of the best albums I've heard in a long time, and I'm really glad that I got to review it and pick it up. Make sure you find that lottery paper copy because it is hella fun to scratch off the cover. So that is my list. I'm glad that I finally got it out there, and I'm hoping to move on and get a few more reviews out. We'll probably have Joseph's list coming up soon, and don't forget to look at that giveaway that I posted about in the last video. It's just some download cards, but I mean, there's some really good albums in there. I'll be posting a list under this description and going back and changing that one because I know I forgot to put it in the description last time. But check that out. Drop a like or subscribe if you enjoyed this, and tell me what were some of your best or your favorite albums of this year. Were you really enjoying? Did you like any of the same things I did? Let me know down in the comments.